Hello, my name is Rafael Ortiz. Welcome to this learning video about English grammar in which we will see cleft sentences. We will see the form and use of cleft sentences and the two most important types of cleft sentences, it and WH. And then we'll see some other secondary types of cleft sentences. The idea here is to know what cleft sentences are, but especially to know the different types of sentences and their use, their purpose. It is important to acknowledge the importance of cleft sentences to give emphasis in special formal or academic English, for example. Let's start with the formal use of cleft sentences. Cleft sentences are divided sentences in which information that could be given in one single clause is divided in two parts to give emphasis to one of the elements. Each one of these parts has its own verb. Here we have a normal sentence with a single clause and one verb. The electrical engineers discovered the problem. Then we can have a corresponding cleft sentence if we want to give emphasis with two clauses and two verbs. It was the electrical engineers, the emphasis is on this part, who discovered the problem. Then these sentences are used to give emphasis to new information, to give information, or to establish contrasts and comparisons between elements. Let's see the structure of a typical it cleft sentence, which is one of the most common types of cleft sentences. It is introduced by it and then followed by a form of the verb to be plus not and or an adverb. And then we have the emphasized phrase or word. And then we finish with a that, which, or who clause. It is not just his lack of commitment that I am complaining about, or it was their remarkable teaching skills that brought them the award. Here, the emphasized elements expressed by the cleft sentences are his lack of commitment or the remarkable teaching skills. It can be used then to emphasize different elements of the normal clause. The neutral or normal clause would be would be Peter saw the manager at the conference last week. We could emphasize different elements with an it cleft sentence. The subject, it was Peter who saw the manager at the conference last week. We can emphasize the object. It was the manager that Peter saw at the conference last week. Or the adverbial phrases. There are two. It was last night that Peter saw the manager at the conference, or it was at the conference that Peter saw the manager last night. We start with an it, but we can emphasize different elements. When and where are alternatives to that, also correct in cleft sentences, when we're talking about time and place elements. For example, in time, it was in March when the research study was published, or we can emphasize the place. It is in the central library that the book can be found. Or where the book can be found. It could be also possible here. And we do not use in these examples, in this case, how, why, or what. It would be incorrect to say, it is the speed of the process what is so strange. Alternatively, we would use the correct sentence. It is the speed of the process that is so strange. In academic English, cleft sentences are very important to present information as noun. Here we have an example. One of the consequences of publication is the impact on society. It is that makes writing for journals so important in the professional world. It's very important to combine correctly the it cleft sentence and the information that we are presenting. We have, on the other hand, WH cleft sentences with a different structure. They start with a WH clause, then followed by a form of to be, or it can be negative, and the emphasized element, word or phrase. What the engineers did was check the connections or to check the connections. Here we highlight or emphasize the action of the sentence and what actually means, in this case, is the thing or the things that. The WH clause always contains a verb, and it is normally a form of the verb to do. And the emphasized phrase contains an infinitive that can come with or without to. If the emphasized verb is in the continuous or perfect form, then do echoes or matches it. For example, what the boys are doing is talking. Then we doing and talking. Taking their father to the beach. Sorry, what the boys are doing is taking their father to the beach. Or what the new technicians have done is tested the new structure. Here we have a mirror between the verbs. We use WH Cleft sentences to emphasize the action, as we said, the verb, in other words, in a sentence. For example, instead of saying it is fully inefficient that these actions are, we would say what these actions are is fully inefficient. Sometimes the order of the parts in a WH Cleft sentence can be reversed. Then we have the emphasized part at the beginning of the sentence. I did not attend the meeting, but I was not on a holiday. Evaluating the new software was what I was really doing. This is the fronting with one of the elements. There are other types of cleft sentences. For example, we can use WH clauses with when, where, and why, and who to highlight different time, place, reason, or person elements in the sentence. But we normally use an introductory noun phrase to express these meanings. Here, the WH clause acts like an ordinary or normal relative clause. For example, we forgot to tell John. We can say the one or the person who we forgot to tell was John. We can emphasize the person. The guy who told us about the new problem was Richard. The place, the building where I used to work was near here. Time, the day, when, or without when, we sold the car was the saddest in my life, or the reason why the structure is brittle is it is made of wood. We have other types of sentence. For example, when we emphasize a noun phrase or a verb phrase with the structure the, only, last, thing, something, or all. Here we have examples. The thing that they disliked about the design was the cheap materials. The only thing that they want is a chance to redesign the prototype. The last thing that we did was to check the oil levels, or something the inspector neglected to mention was the damp of the lab, or all that we need is to be given a second chance. Here we have some optional elements, such as, for example, that, and sometimes the infinitive with to. And we can also use the or one or only thing or person, in this case with negative verbs. The one thing that the system won't do is monitor the status of the engine. Or the one person that I didn't want to see just then walked into the room. As we can see, cleft sentences are very widely used in formal and academic English to emphasize different parts of the sentence. We have to know how to use them correctly to emphasize the element that they want to highlight. And they are very important. We have to recognize they are very important in academic and formal language. I hope this was useful for you, and thank you very much for your attention.